Welcome to Beyond the Firewall, the business bytecast, where tech and business collide. Get expert insights, real-world strategies, and the latest trends in bite-sized episodes. Stay ahead, stay secure, and explore what's beyond the firewall. Welcome back, everybody. We're so excited again to have one of our good friends here, Ryan Morris. Ryan, how are things going on over there?
Going very well, I tell you. It's Friday. I love doing these things with you on a Friday because we get to have a fun conversation and then immediately it's the weekend. Brilliant.
I know, and it's like, happy hour practically. So, it's all exciting, and I'll be off next week traveling, and I'm going off to Florida for a big conference. So hopefully there'll be some exciting new things to talk about when I get back, and definitely will be taking notes. So yeah, listen, it's an interesting time. And in the last couple of days, it's been interesting also looking at what customers are doing and what markets happening, and everybody's been buzzing about it. And I think you mentioned something about customer service or customer satisfaction. Talk to me about that, because I'd like to understand your perspective of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I look at things in the past, the if you think about your CRM system, right, the way you track sales opportunities, the end of the cycle, however, whether you have 7 steps or 12 steps in your sales process, whatever, right? You get to the end. The last one is closed one product delivered, right? I won the deal. That's the end of the cycle. I think we have to rethink how we are approaching these kinds of engagements because, especially in a model like yours, where there is recurring revenue on a long-term contract with monthly installments, the way you pay for your television or your streaming services, the way you pay for your cell phone service, you don't pay a 3-year contract all at once. You sign the contract and then you begin to deliver, which means you are just beginning the relationship and the opportunity to get paid. The most jarring and eye-opening way I ever heard this described was signing a 3-year contract with a customer does not mean 3 years of guaranteed revenue. What it means, 36 opportunities for a customer to cancel if you didn't deliver effectively. So that opens up an entirely new way of thinking. Whatever industry your business is in, the win is just the beginning. And then you have to figure out how to actually keep them around.
Yeah, no, totally. And then one of the biggest challenges right now is, where's the value, right? Because now it's the customer, I find, is worried now. Okay, I just signed this commitment. Yes, I'm going to get whatever it is, the product, the service, but where is that value? And a lot of people, I think, sit back and assume, okay, I've done it. Now I don't have to work for this account anymore. And that account becomes like a disregarded relationship because they're on automatic payment. And that's actually
Mhm.
pretty common in like insurance businesses where you've subscribed for a car insurance, a benefits plan. And when was the last time you got a phone call from your adjuster or your broker and saying, oh, listen, let's start reviewing this? It's is this automatic assumption that for the rest of my life I'm just going to keep paying without ever shopping you out?
Yeah, you will get a call once every contract period, about, suspiciously 60 to 90 days before the contract expires. And they'll call you like they're your best friend and they've been thinking about you all along. They just can't wait to catch up, by the way. Here's how much more it's going to cost next year. Can I get your signature on this piece of paper? And then you won't hear from me for another 12 to 36 months, depending on how long your contract is. This is the thing that I think is interesting. The industries that you mentioned, insurance, financial services, telecommunications, those businesses have been in a subscription model with recurring revenue since the very beginning. That's all they've ever known. That's the only way we've ever thought to pay for those kinds of services. But when you move into technology products and technical services, when you move into professional services like legal and accounting, when you move into manufacturing and the product development and acquisition industries, every industry will get pulled in that direction into a recurring revenue model. not because just necessarily the people that are in that industry think it's a good idea, which, by the way, from a business valuation perspective, the same amount of revenue on recurring contract commitments compared to that amount of revenue on transactional repeat project commitments or product transactions, that recurring revenue will be worth anywhere from 5 to 12 times as much. Same amount of revenue, same level of margin, but the commitment makes the business more valuable. But
Right.
that's not why we're all going to get pulled in that direction. We're not going to go into the recurring revenue subscription relationship with our customers because we think it's a good idea. We will go there because the customer thinks it's a good idea. Because I think customers are done with the idea of I came to you, I bought a product, I spent all the money up front, right? In a business context, we call that CapEx or capital expenditure, and then if it works, I'm happy. If it doesn't work, yeah, too bad. So sad. That's on you. You bought something. Maybe it wasn't the right thing. Maybe you didn't install it correctly. You didn't maintain it effectively. You bought it. You're out all that cash. And then if it works or if it doesn't work, that's the risk on the customer. I think every customer, especially in the B2B world, is waking up to the reality of, maybe I shouldn't be the one who has all the risk. Maybe, just maybe, when I sign that agreement, I ought to have the ability to check month after month, year after year. Is this actually working? Is this doing what they promised that it would do? If so, cool. Let's renew. Let's keep this thing going. I'm getting value. I want to continue to get that value. But at any point in time, when I look at it and go, I just thought I was going to get value, it didn't turn out that way because they got complacent. They got a
Yeah.
little bit lazy and didn't deliver hard. You know what? I can cancel that contract. And because of the telecommunications industry, everybody thinks, oh, you got a 2-year contract. You're locked in for 2 years. I don't think any of us have ever met a contract that you couldn't get out of because we know lawyers. And you can get out of contracts for failure to perform or for failing to meet some of the conditions and commitments. I think customers look around, they see all of the complexity, they see all of the risk associated with the products, the goods, the services that they buy, and they wake up and go, how about we share the risk? How about you and I are in this together? And if it works, you make money, I get value, everybody is happy. But as soon as we break that agreement, I shouldn't be out the money. I should be able to take my business elsewhere. That's going to become the future. You can imagine in that kind of a world, for whatever work it took you to win the deal in the first place, you're going to do more work than that, you win. And not just the technical part, right? Not just the delivery part of doing your job, the account management, the executive relationship, that value justification, the continuous selling, hopefully, if we're doing well, expansion with those customers. You will do more sales work after the contract is signed than you ever did before the contract was signed. That's a whole new world to understand and to figure out, well, how do I staff for that?
Yeah, that's a whole different animal. Interestingly enough, when you look at the telecommunications industries and various others, insurance industries, that whole cross sell, upsell, the ones that are successful have been the ones that have been doing that nurturing cross selling, typical term of land and expand, right? You have our cell phone. How about getting our cable TV or our home phone or the alarm system? And we want you to be part of our ecosystem. I think that a lot of companies are also missing out on that, call it land and expand opportunity, because there is a business there. They're just pigeonholed in the sense of what they do every day, and they're not looking at all the other verticals that are related or intricate into their business that they can basically be, landing and expanding their market.
Yeah,
You know,
and think about it, right? We didn't. It's not like business owners don't understand that. It's not like they look around and go, oh, I didn't realize you could expand and get more from your install base. Business owners are savvy people. They understand enough about value that they got into business to begin with. And they obviously do something well, or else people wouldn't pay them for the thing that they do. So these are
Yep.
savvy people, but we still don't get nearly the performance on the expand part of that land and expand strategy that you described. We don't get, and the question is why? I think there's two reasons. Number one is it's a question of resource and intention. Like,
Hmm.
how much muscle did we put into it because we had an expectation that we would achieve a certain reward from that investment, right? It
Right.
begins with, I think I can expand with these customers, and there's more to be had from this relationship. So I'm going to put real resources into it. Or the contract is the contract. We're just, it is what it is. It's never going to grow. We're fine with that, right? That's the first factor because you begin by knowing it's possible and by wanting more out of those relationships. And then the second thing, I would refer to this, in an industrial sense of raw materials, right? Who did you put on that relationship? Who's assigned to follow up, to have that conversation, to nurture the relationship, and ideally look for the expansion opportunities beyond what we're currently doing? Who'd you put on there? Well, if you're in the MSP industry like you are, if you are in the financial services industry, if you're in the lawn care industry, there was one person who came, built a relationship, they got to know you, you built some trust, and then they hand you over to the technician who does the work. Well, the one thing that we can all say across all the industries, the technicians in every business, you know, the chef in the restaurant, the engineer in the managed services business, the landscaper in the landscape business, those people don't have quite the people skills. They don't have the commercial persuasion skills. They're not here to expand the relationship. They're just here to finish their tickets. I got my tasks. I know 10 things that need to be done. I got them done, and I sent a note to the customer that said, I got them done. Do you need anything else? You don't? Okay, fine. And then we moved on, right?
Yes.
That's simply never going to produce value. There has to be a skill set invested, number one, in quantity, so that you can cover enough of your customers that you can actually scale this thing. And then there has to be a skill set that says, I understand what's been committed to the customer and I can ensure that it gets delivered. Think of that as project management, right? There has to be some user advice, some use cases and scenarios where we can say, look, I know you're new and you just started using this thing that we do. Here's how other people like you use it and the benefit that they get from this resource that we provide. Then we have to say, by the way, when we got started, we understood you had 10 different needs, but we just started with the first one. And then we said, once we've delivered that, we'll come back and talk about two, and then three, and then four. And you have to not only define that roadmap, but you have to lead that roadmap. You have to lead it with the customer so that it's not just you waiting for the phone to ring and going, did you need anything more? It is, remember, here's our plan for the next 36 months. We're currently in phase two, but when we get this done, phase three is right on tap. Here's what we need to do to be ready to go. And then the fourth skill is the commercial persuasion, right? Now, in a lot of businesses, the customer success individual doesn't book the deal, right? Like they don't negotiate pricing or sign contracts and purchase orders. They might pass that back over to the salesperson because that's what salespeople do, but they have a commercial conversation. They're not afraid of saying, absolutely, we could do more for you. There's good value in what we're currently delivering, but we could do more in return for more investment, right? Because if you just think about all the engineers that you know in this world,
Mhm.
everybody who's a software engineer, a hardware jockey, the guys who know the technology, maybe 5% of those humans are comfortable saying, we could absolutely do that for you, and here's how much it would cost.
Right.
And you want to know something common among that 5%? You know what those guys have in common? They're you. They own a business. They own a business because they know the tech and they can sell. They can have that persuasion. And that's how they actually grow their business. The other 95% of engineers, you say, I'm not going to ask you to negotiate price. You don't have to close the deal. You don't have to be a
Right.
sales guy, but you need to find the new opportunity and qualify it and make sure that the customer believes this is a good idea. And then you need to tag in your sales guy to come back around and close the deal.
Yeah.
95% of the 95%, if you ask them to do that, they recoil. There's like this, there's risk, there's rejection. I don't want to deal with that stuff. I hate that idea. You can't force me.
Right.
Okay, I buy that. Let's not force them. Let's not force people to do things beyond what their nature is. Let's put the right people in there who have that nature. Project management, use case and adoption to lead the customer, the roadmap management, and the commercial conversation. Those are the four kinds of core skill functions that a customer success person would need. But look around the wide world right now. How many of those unicorns do you see out there?
Right. Very interesting. And it's a I've actually read and I've also heard from different, call it, events, that organizations, I think like Disney, I think Zappos and a few others, where they empower their employees to do things that go above and beyond. And they've got like an allowance to do so without having to get authorizations and stuff like that. And that perceived value for the experience also elevates that
Hmm.
customer, right? I remember this one guy was telling me, I think he wrote a book called Disney U, and he said, there was this kid, the family spent $1,000 to get into the park for the day, and the kid bought this, I don't know, $10-$20 bag of popcorn, which obviously we're there, it's expensive, and obviously what happens to the bag of popcorn? It falls on the floor. And they've been empowered that if the employee or one of the people that are working there sees something like that, they can correct that. They have the empowerment that they can go in, grab a bag of popcorn and say, really sorry to see that. We thought this would be like, the case in the story was Mickey Mouse was really sorry that you dropped your popcorn. He's really heartbroken. And he sent me to come and give you another bag of popcorn. And the child goes from crying to smiling on a 10-cent bag of popcorn that the parents were all distraught over. But at the magic moment there, it hit home. And I'm sitting here going, okay, empowering your staff, giving them the ability to be able to do that. What is the true cost to the company when the technician or the frontline worker has the ability to correct something without having to go back and make that, not making the decision at that time, where time is critical today? I think
Yep.
that's a very good case in point on how many people don't invest in their people to get to that type of an experience.
That's see, I love that example applied to other industries, right? Because we think,
Yes.
oh, it's Mickey Mouse. Of course, it's easy. No, no, you can do that at the muffler and brake shop. You
Yeah.
could do that at your accountant's office. You could do that in any environment where there's an expectation that doesn't get met, and the frontline person is empowered and authorized to do something about it. I believe very strongly that customer experience, we need to design it. We need to kind of script the way we deal with businesses, right? It should be intentional, and there really can be repeatable processes that get implemented there. But experience is real time. Experience is right here, right now. Either I'm having a good experience or I'm not. And if the person who I'm dealing with can tell that I'm not having a good experience, and then they don't do anything about it, I didn't just have a bad experience. I developed a reputation for your business, right? Like that cements in my brain. It's going to stick around a while. But this is where we have to stretch a little further. Every one of your technicians, your frontline people, should be empowered to deliver good customer experience. But customer success is a step beyond. Customer success is the conversation about they didn't just enjoy working with us, they actually got the outcome that they thought they were paying for in the beginning, right? You mentioned it at the beginning of this conversation, value instead of price, right?
Right.
We should sell value. We should convince the customer that when they work with us, they will get value. Can you count that value, right? The fact that we're real smart, we'll try hard, and we'll deliver really good services, those are not countable. Those are the worst form of good ideas without solid evidence. And therefore, they just don't make a difference when it comes to a business decision where I might choose who I'm going to hire to do something important for me.
Right.
I need to go beyond the promises and get to what is actual value, right? In your space specifically, right? The managed services in technology, that industry does a very, very good job of putting precise metrics to it. Here is the number of people that are supported. Here are the fees that were charged, so you can calculate very easily cost per head count that you are investing. And if you were to do that with your own in-house team, salaries and benefits and fully loaded cost of employees and all of that, here's what the cost would be for your employees to do that internally. Here's how much you pay us to deliver that for you as a contract service. Cash money, real calculation. You cannot argue with that kind of a mathematic formula. That's not the only way that an MSP delivers value, but it's one very precisely countable way. My challenge to people is you cannot achieve customer success unless you begin by knowing what it is the customer is actually willing to pay to accomplish, right? They and this is hard for a lot of professionals to hear because they think, well, I'm a lawyer. They hire me because they needed legal services. No, they didn't. They hired you because they needed to resolve a tax issue or they were in a lawsuit with somebody. They needed to sue a business for failure to perform. We don't buy professional services because we want to. We buy it because something happened, and the only way to resolve it is for me to give money that I didn't want to give to solve a problem, right? In the technology industry, oh, our customers love us. We provide great service. They get good value. They really appreciate the experience that they have.
That's right.
They love us as service providers about as much as we love the guy who sells us new tires for our car, right? I cannot drive my car without tires, just like your customers cannot run their business without IT.
That's
It's
right.
no longer possible. It's mandatory. But the last time you had to go in and buy tires for your car, did you go in there and go, I love tires. This is going to be great. I can't wait to spend money on tires. Or did you look at the manufacturer of those tires and go, those scoundrels, they sold me something that wore out too fast. That product wasn't good enough quality. If it could just last another 5 or 10,000 miles, I wouldn't be out the cat. We do it in spite of what we want to do because we know we need to. It's the same psychology that happens when you go to the dentist. Do you enjoy going to the dentist?
No.
No, not even remotely, but you enjoy it a lot more than your teeth falling out of your head, right? So
Right.
you do it and you go, it's miserable, it's painful, and by God, I had to pay money for that. Like I had a miserable experience and I had to pay for it. People need to embrace in the business to business world. That's the only way your customer can think of you, unless you can identify what they would pay money for to achieve as a meaningful outcome. If they said, well, I have 50 sales reps and they're spread all around the country and they're in mobile offices and they go visit customers every day, I need them to be 20% more productive because I can take some of that ridiculous paperwork off of their table and they can, instead of sitting around filling out paperwork, they could do 5 more customer visits this week. Okay, let's get 5 more customer visits per sales rep per week over the course of a year. X number of sales calls would have required 2 or 3 or 4 additional sales headcount. You got more sales capacity. You did not have to pay for more salespeople. Oh, okay. Countable value. If you can't count it, then the only way that a customer can think of you is, damn it, it's time to go to the dentist again, and I don't want to. I don't want to be thought of that way by my customers. I'm sure you don't either. The only way we can do that is we have to begin by discovering and defining real tangible value and then showing the customer, this is how I will help you achieve that value. And then later on, we have to be able to come back and go, here it is. I actually did what I said I would do, and you got the value that you would get. That's how you get people to renew their contract.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that in so many ways. And I think B2B, it's an interesting one because today, there's this tough balance between, throwing people at it. I've seen companies, especially in the tech sector, this new customer success manager that they've actually titled now as old version of account managers. And then on the flip side, you've got companies out there that are using way too much technology with like weekly KPI newsletters and CSAT scores and putting in the all these surveys. And I'm like inundated. I go to a hotel these days and I get like survey this and survey that, and I'm spending 20 minutes. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Why are you annoying me? Like after I why are you not concerned about my stay while I'm actually in my room, not 7 days after I get home and I'm already over it if I did have a bad experience. And if I did have a good experience, you should get that praise while I'm on site to at least recognize the individuals that were making my stay special. And it's interesting because defining that role in the organ, like your business. So when you're doing your business and finding those key metrics to help better the customer experience is critical. It is not a single pane of glass for everybody. Not every business out there, lawyer, landscaper, plumber, whatever it is, and hospitality, those metrics are very different. And a lot of companies don't invest the right process to actually get the right moment and the right experience for the customer. I think a lot of them take a blanket approach. They buy a tool, they buy a solution that's off the shelf, off, whatever they're being sold. And they say, well, I just bought a customer success platform. Just like when I remember a couple of years ago, everyone was buying those CSAT platforms, sending out net promoter scores. And look, we get these amazing results. You know why? Because the only people that are clicking yes on it are the people that do like you today. The people that didn't acknowledge you, what about the rest? Because you send it out to like 1,000 different people, and you get 100 people that respond on it. So it's your 10% or your 5% that respond on it. Those are the people that actually like you, and they're the ones that are going to click yes. That I love you guys. The rest of the people, if they didn't acknowledge you, you should be concerned why 900 people didn't fill out that survey, and your response rate is not 80 or 90%. And it's not just about giving a free Yeti mug or a free Amazon gift card for filling out the survey. There are some metrics around that, and it's part of that process. So how do companies now engage that? How do they figure this out? Is it something that is there a playbook? Is it, are there really industry experts out there that do this? Obviously you've got some background in this space. You've done this before. I've seen you talk about this in full depth and work on this, but like, where do you start, and how do you go about finding the right resources to put this together?
Yep, it's a great question. I think there's two fields that people can really get tactical on, two dimensions of this topic. The first is what I will call a customer health score, a multi-factor assessment of the current condition of my customer, right? Like you said, not the current condition of how they feel about an experience they had last month, but as close to real time as possible. What is it about their relationship that indicates they're actually in? That they're paying attention, that they're healthy, right? If you think of just, we'll use your business as a good example in the managed services space. there's all these systems that you provide, and we tend to track like, oh, did the system go down, or did they have an outage with their technology? I think those are measuring in the wrong direction. I think you measure on the other side, and it's, did they actually use the systems that you are managing for them? You have to be able to track stuff like that, right? Are they actually feeling like they're more productive in their job? Do they recognize that this is providing value? And you can do that with technology, with questionnaires, with relationship conversations as you go through the day-to-day part of the experience. It should not be just those post experience surveys. I think that's the first thing that you can ask your frontline people to do. Hey, by the way, overall, how are you guys feeling about the relationship that you have with us and the value that we're delivering? What about this way? If you could teach your people at, once a week, one time a month, when you're talking to these customers, ask them these 4 questions. Just nothing threatening, no in-depth, like heavy survey. 4 quick questions. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Are we good? Right? Like, get that. The magic is as it happens when you track that over time. What happens in that environment is you actually trend those responses. And not only can you identify the ones that are happy, cool, they're going to stick around, but you can also identify the ones who aren't happy, the risk, the ones that are, they're unsatisfied, they're at risk of churning, they might go away at some point in the future. And at any point that I see a customer account dip on one of those key metrics, I see that metric go down immediately. A phone call, take them out for a cup of coffee. Let's have a conversation. Let's just kind of talk about this stuff. The early intervention to prevent churn, that's the most tangible thing that you can do. And the key is you have to make it countable and measurable, and it has to be captured in the course of the activity and the relationship, not as a survey that you bombed in on them from outside of the relationship, right? The
Mm,
second thing is you have to be able to, that's what I will call a leading indicator. It
right.
predicts the future. You also have to track the lagging indicators. And the most meaningful metric that you will track in any business, but especially a business that has contract recurring revenue with your customer engagements, NDR, net dollar retention. What I mean by that is take any given customer and calculate what they spent with you last year, how much they spent with you this year, and as a percentage, what happened, right? So if they spent 100 with you last year and they spent 100 with you this year, net
Mm,
dollar retention is 1. Okay, cool, 1. That seems good. If they lost a few employees, there were a few seats that went away, they're still here, they're still happy, but they went from 100 to 95, then you got a 0.95 on that metric, right? If they said, oh, well, we added some people, oh, and you talked to us not only about the cybersecurity service you were providing, but you also came back in and helped us deal with our data protection and our intellectual property maintenance. So that customer went from 100 to 130. Okay. Net dollar retention of 1 is a business that is barely clinging on. All the work you did, all the effort that you put in, what you accomplished was you barely kept your head above water and you did what you did last year. A business that is under 1, anything that's a point 0.9, point 0.8, whatever, you should start looking for a new job because that business is not healthy and it's bleeding customers faster than it can bring them in. Anybody that's above 1, that starts to get really interesting and you can really investigate why. If we look at the managed services industry, the SaaS industry, the professional services industries, and when we look at those, the killer metric is 1.2, right? My customers who spent money with me last year, great. I'm glad they spent money with me. Those same customers, they stuck around. Most people will just go, hey, they stuck around. No churn. This is good. Same number of customers. Everybody is happy. I want to look inside of that and say, last year they spent 100. This year they spent 120. Okay. Cool. The best way you can think about this is healthy things grow. In business, in life, in nature, healthy things grow. If your relationship with your customer is the same or less than it was last year, that's not growing. That's not healthy. If it is growing, then by definition, the customer believes you're doing something valuable. You got to be able to track the leading indicators, but then you have to keep score at the end. And for all the metrics that are out there, net dollar retention on a customer by customer basis,
Hmm.
for all the people who did paid us last year, how much more or less did they pay us this year? And now we dig in and start to figure out why.
That's interesting. Yeah, one of the models that we've always taken as an organization is investing in our customers as if we're helping them grow their business. And it's actually been a major success part of our business operation because and they're like, "Well, why are we doing this?" Because we're not technicians. At the end of the day, the technical stuff that we do is pretty, call it linear. I'm going to use that word, right? No different than when you call a lawyer and say, I need to set up a company. Well, setting up articles of incorporation is a very linear. You go to your
Hmm.
accountant and you do a notice to reader or you do like your annual filing. It's a linear job. The success of having and I took this out of my lawyer and my accountant, they took the time and effort to say, oh, why are we doing this for you? And why are we structuring your company in such and such a way? Because we want you to succeed. We want you to grow. And so, I've seen customers where we've taken them for 5, 10 employees when we started working with them. And one of my top case success stories was, we were taking on an engineering firm. I think we started working with them, and I think they were maybe about 20 some odd people, maybe 30 at most at the time, and it was like, well, our network was all over the place and we needed to fix things up. And I came in and I sat down with them and I sat with their management meeting, and we actually figured out a strategy for them to be more efficient, more productive, less issues, be compliant for whatever it is that they needed to do for their industry. And part of their success and their growth and them being able to even win RFPs was because of the way that they were set up. And as at the end of the day, yes, they had to still do the legwork, they had the sales, they had all of their other processes, but the success of the process we put in and the effort we put in, they eventually grew to like 100 plus employees, and they eventually exited and sold to a larger organization. So, I'm and then obviously it was hurtful for me because at the end of the day, they're no longer a client because the larger entity now is way too big and they actually had their own department. But it was a beautiful success where I was happy for the owner, and I was like, this was a massive success story that we were working with a company. And on the flip side, I've seen companies where no matter what, you've told them, you need, AI, and we're talking to customers saying you got to start playing with Copilot or Gemini or something, and they're like, it's not going to affect my business. I'm like, it's going to affect every business in one way, shape, or another, just like email did. And I'm sitting here going, if you're not going to invest some time and effort, your business is not going to be around in 5 to 10 years if you last that long, because your competitors now will be able to outperform you 5 to 10x product, service, support, customer relations. All of that's happening as we speak. So, it is about investing in the customer as much as putting all these lead indicators and looking at it. To me, that is the investment. And then the post, in that regard, is seeing how much growth as well the company
Hmm.
is doing now. And yes, the revenue may be part of that aspect, that they're spending more money, but I also see it as we're up to 15 employees, we're up to 50 employees, we're growing organically now. The customer's going to buy because they're seeing value in everything else that we've done. And it doesn't matter what it is. Again, like I said, it could be the lawyer, it could be the marketing agency. If my market, and I've seen this, my marketing agency I started working with, and they started us with one aspect of our business, let's call it the SEO part of it, and customers were finding us online. Next thing you know, we're like, hey, you should be doing now social media. Okay, let's do so. So what do I know about social media? They're putting in value. They're telling me about the extra services. Next thing you know, we're getting clicks. We're getting thousands of clicks on our reels and stuff like that. And they're like, well, now maybe you should do a podcast. And I'm like, well, this is really cool. And one of the reasons why we're here now, right? It's like these are the new things that, we're looking at it going, how does a marketing agency now get more value to their customer doing all this stuff? And my spend with them has gone from like 1,000 to several $1,000s a month, because that's how it's going to happen if they're bringing
Hmm.
in the additional value. Well, yeah, I transparent across the business world. Doesn't matter what business you're in. If it's a B2B, it's a very linear conversation on how that value can be either, seen, tracked in some sort of a metrics. And even if you're doing a B2C, like, buying a car and looking at going in and getting a new car every 3 to 5 years, at the end of the day, if the dealership's not going to call me over the term of my lease or my financing or whatever or not, I'm just going to go to the corner oil change guy. And then when the car comes up for renewal, I may just go to the guy who's got the best deal. And that's not
Yep,
what you want.
exactly. See, I love the way that you described that. You just described the literal, tangible definition of customer success. Your customer actually succeeded.
Yeah.
Cool. If you can make a believable argument to your customer that they succeeded because of something that you helped them do, if you made a material contribution to their success, they will stick around. They will spend more with you as they grow. They will tell their friends that this is how we became successful because that guy was willing to go beyond his linear engagement and the work he was doing, and he added value. That's how you actually create it. And I think this is a brave new world because everybody grew up in business where it was like, there's marketing, there's sales, we won. And then we just have to provide some service afterwards. No, the win is not the end of the sales cycle. The win is the beginning of the customer success cycle.
And if you want to be around for the next 5, 10 years, it's all about investing in that. Because, I was talking to a colleague of mine recently, and it was like companies like Amazon are going to be even afraid of what's happening with AI. And AI is going to be now negotiating on your behalf with, let's call it, the agentic on your side, finding vendors, finding suppliers, finding relationships. It does not need an Amazon anymore. It's going to hunt it down on its own, negotiate based on your criterias. How are you going to negotiate with a technology that has got no emotions? And it's all going to be narrowed down to, you know um relationships with the business owner. So like, if I know you and I'm going to be telling my virtual purchasing platform, hey, I want to work with Ryan, please make sure that our businesses are communicating with one another. It will do that as a linear function, and it'll do the purchasing and receiving and whatever else it'll do. If I'm not happy with Ryan and I'm going to say, yeah, we're no longer going to be doing business with Ryan, can you find me a next competitor? Within 5 seconds, it's going to say, these are the next 5 local competitors to Ryan's business. Would you like me to start engaging a communication with them? And I'll find you the best price across these different players, or the best rated, or the best service. This is the reality that, even Amazon now is going to sit there and go, how am I going to compete with that so-called easy access to buying products when the agentic platform will be doing that over the next 12 to 36 months, 48 for sure, right? 3 to 5 years, we're in a world that purchasing as we were today on Amazon will evolve to 2.0,
Yep,
right? So we need to start thinking about the person in itself. And I think that that's going to be a huge leap forward.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Great
it's crazy.
conversation. So many things to think about in this conversation. It's like you look at the concept and then you figure out, oh, geez, that applies to my business. I should probably, when we hang up here, I should probably go make a phone call and go talk to that one client and be like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, 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 for sure. So yeah, man, what do you guys? You got some big plans for this weekend?
You know what? We are relaxing as much as possible. We have some travel coming up. And so, I find travel is fascinating, but it's much more enjoyable if you're prepared for it and you don't just frantically throw your stuff in a bag the night before you get on an airplane. So I'm going to relax. I'm going to get ready for some travel.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and listen, I hope my customer success and my customer experience over the next several days is all there when it comes to the travel, the hotel, the conference, the meals, and then they're like, "Oh, why don't you come back to this conference?" And I'm like, "It was a horrible conference, and you don't want to come back." So it's the good ones I want to come back to. So you see,
Absolutely.
even the conferences, if they don't have a good conference, I'm not going back to them. So,
Yep.
every industry has the same challenge and stuff. So, anyhow, Ryan, I want to thank you for coming out again. It was always a blast to have you out on our show. I hope everybody out there is enjoying our content. It's always exciting to hear, what you have to say and the insights on what you've got for businesses out there. So, thank you for coming out. Looking forward to getting you back out on our next episode. Have yourself a great weekend, and thank you guys, everybody, for being out there.
Thanks a lot, everybody.